Dear Venerable brothers and sisters, Dhamma friends, this is the time for our today's Dhamma talk. To start the Dhamma talk, may you all consent with 3 times, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Katanca bhikkhave atitang anvagameti evang vedano ahosin atitamadhananti tatta nanding samanvaneti. Katanca bhikkhave anagatang patikankhati evang vedano siyang ati anagata madhananti tatta nanding samanvaneti. Dear Dhamma friends, as we agreed yesterday, we will be taking this the main topic, namely the Bhaddekaratta Sutta, as the common topic for this whole series. And based upon that, yesterday we have taken time to understand how to keep the mind secluded in the present moment, or in the present time, as far as the time is concerned, keep it here and now with respect to the materiality. And in this particular sutta, namely this Bhaddekaratta Sutta, the Buddha explained how the mind chased behind the back, the past, and the anchoring behind forward, so that it will be very disturbed and not in solitude, not in peace, and with respect to the materiality, with respect to the feelings, with respect to the perceptions, volitional activities and the consciousness. And by understanding and bringing them back to the present moment, only one can think about this ideal solitude. So therefore, these 5 aggregates are very important in the sense to understand as they are, and then understanding as they are means in this context, understanding of the 2 extremes. And then with respect to that 2 extremes, the Buddha come out with the thesis, the constructive part, to assimilate the middle path. And once that is accepted, understood in the conceptual basis, on the philosophical level, one has to strive through this middle path, and while striving along this middle path also, there are some traps. There are some things one has to be careful, otherwise that is also a bias to the pleasurable sensation and the painful sensation with regard to the feelings. And with respect to each and every aggregate, there are some pitfalls and the traps. If we are to get some summary and understanding regarding the yesterday's topic, that is to say the materiality, the Buddha says whenever we are thinking about the materialistic contact, and in the part we experience the past and the future, and knowing that these are the extremes, and if we come to the present moment, and they are also, when we are associating the 4 elements in the present moment, namely the earth element, the fire element, air element and the water element, each and every element, even in the present context, on the present moment, have extremes. That is the characteristic of the materiality. For example, in the earth element, the hardness and the softness, the smoothness and the roughness, heaviness and the lightness are the traits to represent the earth element. Our untrained mind often recognize or discriminate earth element from the others by these characteristics. And when we go to the fire element, heat and cold. When to the water, cohesiveness and fluidity. And in the air element, the shaking, expanding nature and the holding capacity. They are extremes with respect to the touch. So if the mind is untrained, it only experience and entertain these extremes. Whenever they come to the middle, our perception can't really perceive them in between the roughness and the smoothness. It's in between the hardness and the softness, in between area. Even though it is representing the middle path, very difficult one to be aware because it won't titillate your mind. It won't give any hilarious feeling for your mind, not dramatic. So untrained mind is always associating this extreme cold and extreme heat or extreme hardness and the extreme softness. But whenever it comes to the middle, it loses the grip. So therefore, by associating these extremes, never you will come to the correct path. And even if you come with good instructions and association with the true people, you feel your mind become bewildered. So that is why when the air element, in terms of in-breath and out-breath, when you start it, you get the gross feelings. That is the middle part of the in-breath, as well as the middle of the out-breath. It appears very rubbing sensation, heat, cold, and they are some or the other we can maintain the track. But whenever it is becomes subtler and subtler, our mind becomes bewildered, and therefore many people recognize this unperceivable state as one's own mistake or one's own bad past karma or one's own unfortunate situation. So therefore the Buddha says, not only you are doing away with the past and the future, even if you be in the present with respect to the materiality, whenever the proper middle path assimilating, manifesting due to your correct methodology, the perception itself is as the correct path. It's a completely electric thing. May or may not be happen. So that is why even when it is keeping the mind in the present moment and observing the middle of the in-breath and middle of the out-breath as the stiffness, tension, movements, rubbing and all the kind of thing, more and more you go there, when you are to observe the subtle start of the in-breath and the subtle end of the in-breath and the subtle start of the out-breath and the subtle end of the in-breath, out-breath, the mind becomes somewhat bewildered. So one has to be very seriously follow it. That is the point where you have to fine-tune your mindfulness so that you will not miss the bus. And when that is happening, whenever you are going to this new kind of experience where you trying to keep the very subtle, the beginning of the in-breath and the end of the in-breath, very subtle beginning of the out-breath and the beginning of the in-breath, like there's a kind of a feelings happening in the mind, and it is quite unpredictable, and that sometimes some people consider it as something pleasurable and as if a confirmation and resolution going to set in. For some others, for the majority, it appears like something uncertain and irritable and boring and monotony happens. So therefore they consider it is as a reason to entertain doubts, and they lose the faith. So this is the part today we are going to take as the today's talk, that is with respect to the materiality, how our feelings are manifesting. So therefore it is almost related to the materiality or yesterday's talk. So in the present day, today's talk, that is to say the feelings, the Buddha says how one can get lost in tracing back the past. That is because you are concerned about the good feelings you had in the past, or very bad feelings or experience you had in the past. And whenever the present moment is wandered off, daydreaming and fantasizing about the past, that you never get the chance to go into the middle path. Not only that, you may be planning and yearning for the future, still based on the pleasure principle, to maximize the pleasure. So that is what the worldly knowledges are. And regret about the past and the excitement toward the future. So you have to understand these are the two extremes, and both of them often happen with respect to the pleasurable feeling. And due to the wrong calculation, due to the wrong formula, due to the wrong approach you have, even though you are planning for this kind of a pleasurable thing, ultimately end up with the pain. So therefore, the Buddha says, the past already gone. Future is yet to come. So therefore, dealing with them is abnormal, deranged. So he instead suggests to keep the mind in the present moment. And even then, when you are keeping the mind in the present moment with respect to the feelings, whenever the primary object going to become subtle, there are this kind of the mental kind of pain and pleasure going to manifest, and that is also going to do the same kind of bewilderment, deranging of the middle path. So therefore, with respect to the feelings, you have to theoretically understand the past and the future with respect to the time dimension, and space-wise, my pleasure and my family members' pleasure, our society's pleasure, our country's pleasure, or otherwise the pain, how to get rid of my pain and our pain, likewise that is also spreading also. And the other dimension is the pain and the pleasure. And yet another one in the religious sphere, the Buddha introduced the pain and pleasure related to the sensuous organs. That means by seeing good visual objects, hearing good sounds, good smells, taste, and luxurious touch to the body. So they are called sensuous pleasure, and sometimes the Buddha used the household pleasure. Lay people, that is what they are going to maximize. But after listening to a Dhamma talk, after listening and contemplating on that, if someone is trying to do even at least at the experimental basis to get solitude from that kind of thing, for example, now we are in a retreat, we are not much aiming at this kind of a sensuous pleasure, instead trying to keep the stream of consciousness as much as possible in the present moment, be mindful, be diligent. When it is happening, there is a certain amount of sensuous pleasure coming with respect to our basic needs. But whenever the mindfulness come into being, Even if you are face to face with the primary object, so to say the in-breath and out-breath in sitting, and left leg feeling and the right leg feeling in the walking meditation or otherwise, other in the day-to-day activities, with respect to that also, there's a kind of mental feelings. In Pali it is called somanassa domanassa. They are also doing a kind of distraction and bewilderment, just like the sensuous pleasure. So that is called the renunciated kind of pleasure, or sometimes called immaterial kind of pleasure. This is very tricky when compared to this materialistic pleasure or sensuous pleasure. But we are lucky because for the last 2,600 years, these things are well mapped, they well identified, and therefore whenever you proceed according to the mindfulness, you are bound to meet this mental kind of painful and the pleasurable feelings. And in order to master, in order to understand the picture in totality, you have to introduce the no pain, no pleasure situation. With respect to this pain and pleasure, the no pain, no pleasure is considered as the middle path. So when you are proceeding, when you are advancing with this no pain, no pleasure, the shadows of the pain and pleasure comes and bewilderment can happen. So if you know beforehand, or if you go prepared, you are the winner. Otherwise, there may be a lot of going round the path rather than taking the straight path. So with that respect, you have to understand the relationship between the painful feeling and the pleasurable feeling, and sometimes the relationship with these two with the no pain, no pleasure situation. And the kind that we explain as the household pleasure or sensuous pleasure or materialistic pleasure, they are manifesting and manipulating in our minds, so that we bound to transgress the moral code or ethics in order to maximize it. If it is so, we will never be exposed, we will never be sophisticated, go into this kind of a very subtle sphere. So therefore, at the outset, we have to make a vow, we have to make a determination not to transgress in terms of the physical and verbal misdeed. That is what we call moral training. And once that is confirmed, only we can go to this immaterial kind of pleasure or this renunciated kind of pleasure. Even when that happens, you must understand there are tricky nature and the perverted natures, otherwise very difficult to have a trouble-free path, trouble-free trip. So in order to add more information, I would like to quote another sutta you find in the very Majjhima Nikaya known as Chulavedalla Sutta. And there's a dialogue happening between two disciples. So very, very clear and very sharp to have a theoretical understanding about these feelings. And two disciples, one is female, the other one is male. They used to be married couple, and ultimately the female directly go into the nunnery and she got the full ordination and she became fully enlightened. The male still as a lay devotee but renunciated, living in the monastery as a lay person, but it's highly developed in vipassana, and he entertained doubt as to his ex-last wife, whether she has really got the Dhamma or really achieved the the meaning of her ordination. So therefore he go and cross-question or question, kind of a dialogue is going on. Part and parcel of it is, with respect to the feelings, it's very enlightening. The male is known as Visakha. Visakha is raising a question to the bhikkhuni Dhammajiva. She is fully enlightened, asking what is the pain and pleasure of the pleasurable feeling. You see, the question itself is quite not normal, because for the normal mind, there is no doubt regarding the painful, pleasurable feeling as to whether there is a pain and pleasure. And pleasurable means pleasurable. But due to his understanding and his inquiring nature, is raising the question to this bhikkhuni Dhammadina, dear sister, what is the pain and pleasure of the pleasurable feeling? The very appropriate answer is, Venerable Dhammadina says, the bhikkhuni says, "Oh dear Upasaka, when the pleasurable feeling comes and sets in, it is pleasurable. But when it is fading off, the pain comes." So that is, these are the two facets of the pleasurable feeling. When it comes and sets in and established, you feel pleasurable, but when it is fading off, going off, you develop the painful side of it. But unless otherwise you go prepared, unless otherwise you are well instructed, you will not see the painful side of this pleasurable feeling, because you are undermining tendency to the attachment, undermining tendency of attachment to the pleasurable feeling. This is the way your mind has been conditioned. So you consider the pleasurable feeling is pleasurable. So therefore when it comes, you are very elated and attracted. So you try to maximize it. You fail to understand when it is fading off, it precipitates some kind of pain. So therefore, whenever you are trying to understand the whole picture, you must be prepared, you must be well instructed. When the pleasurable feeling happens, when it is existing, you experience that kind of pleasure. But if you are sharp enough to see this pleasurable feeling is not permanent, it is subject to the transient nature. When it is fading off, it is definitely fading off. When it is fading off, if you are in that very present moment, well instructed, definitely prepared, then you can see it is leaving behind some pain. But if you are bewildered with this attachment, with the underlying tendency of desirable tendency to the desirable feeling, then you will miss the bus. And then the Visakha Upasaka is asking, dear sister, what is the pain and pleasure of painful feeling? Then verily the sister Dhammadina says, "O Upasaka, when the pleasurable feeling is prevailing and it is one sets in, it is painful. But when it is fading off, it is pleasurable. But unless otherwise you are prepared, you will not see the pleasurable part of the painful feeling because of the influence of the underlying tendency of the hatred towards the painful feeling." So if you wish to understand the things as they are, if you wish to understand the transient nature of these feelings, you must be well instructed. You must go prepared and always try to keep the mind in the present moment. Then you can see the transient nature of the painful feeling. Even though it is going to give the pain its face value, when it's fading off, definitely there's a reason for you to be glad, because it is precipitating, it is leaving some pleasure. So this is rationally you can deduce, you can understand the dialogue, the discussion. But the most essential part of it is the third question. The Upasaka Visaka is asking, dear Venerable Sister, what is the pain and pleasure of no pain, no pleasure kind of feeling? A kind of a neutral feeling. Then the Sister Dhammajiva is telling, whenever the no pain, no pleasure situation prevailing, if that particular person knows it, it's a pleasure. If that particular person is not aware, that is a pain. Because the underlying tendency of ignorance. So you have to be aware of the ignorance, be aware of the conditioning of the mind. When and where this no pain, no pleasure happens, your escaping mind always trying to find a reason other than this, and you often not aware of it. You are not awakened into that, so therefore it appears like very boring, very pale, very dull, and very damp, and kind of irritation. So all these 9 combinations you have to understand, at least in the theoretical basis, then only you will be a successful yogi. In the early part of your meditation, maybe early part of your sitting meditation, or your early part of your meditation career. So if I am to go back to and refer to the yesterday's talk, we took the materiality, verifiable materiality, to restrain our mind and to introduce some mindfulness and the concentration. On that sense, we have taken the bodily contact as the primary object. Out of this bodily contact, materiality also, we take the air element, the in-breath and out-breath, or rising and falling of the abdomen as the starting point, as the benchmark. So when and where you become successful to keep the breath face to face with, in order to make the situation more established and confirmed, you are being asked to experience the in-breath, out-breath in a discrete manner, discriminative manner, when and where it is manifesting in the gross level. This is the in-breath, this is out-breath, and these are the natural characteristics of the in-breath, and these are the natural characteristics of the out-breath. You try to see as vividly as possible, as immediately as possible, when and where it is happening in the gross way. And if you manage to continue with the in-breath and out-breath, slowly what happens in the most of the cases, they become subtler and subtler. Because your sitting posture, unagitated mind need not much of oxygen. So therefore physical action of inhalation and exhalation also calming down. And therefore the breath may become subtler. That is what the Buddha says, the longer breath becomes shorter. And more it becomes shorter, they become more and more face to face with your noting mind. And there the Buddha explained, Sabbakaya patisangvedi asasi samiti sikkati. Sabbakaya patisangvedi pasasi samiti sikkati. Then you can see the whole breath body, not like 2 actions, it is appear like a 1 cycle. In-breath is 1 part, out-breath is 1 part, it is continuous. So you can see all the subtle parts. That means how the in-breath gives rise to the out-breath at the end, and the out-breath, when it is ceases to exist, how the in-breath happen, everything going to happen. Everything going to be more and more obvious when the mindfulness is coming to the uninterrupted way, steadfastness, with the steadfastness of the mindfulness. When that happens, your general feeling, the touching sensation itself, is becoming subtler and subtler. So when that happens, if you are, whenever the gross feeling happens, if it is continuous with the in-breath and out-breath, when and where the mindfulness is steadfast, you will be happy thinking that meditation is good. when compared to yesterday or the last sitting. Now I can sit with, I can be face to face with the breath longer. So this, the pleasurable feeling can come in, and it is encouraging. But slowly when the in-breath and out-breath is fading off, you don't know what to do. And therefore, some people entertain doubts, some people going to do forced breathing, or otherwise mind can fall into sleep, or otherwise feel get up and go. But if you are well instructed, you know this can happen. So therefore, whenever this kind of the fading off happens, you have to expect this kind of a little bit of bewilderment. This manifests in terms of more and more thoughts, and more distraction from sounds, and more distraction from your bodily pains also. That is, you can explain it in two ways, because now your mindfulness is a little bit sharper, and your primary object also slowly fading off. Therefore, some thoughts, passive thoughts or inner thoughts may appear like increasing, and the outside sounds also appear like somewhat disturbing, and slowly bodily pains also happening. So therefore, there may be a lot of negative elements, so your painful feeling can set in. So if you try to understand properly with preparedness and with the resolution, you can cut through it, you can go through it, and then you will go to the very subtle, or we can say the subtlest form of the in-breath and out-breath. And there, instead of the doubt or uncertainty, a certainty, the resolution, the faith, the gladness, the rapture, the tranquility, that also can come in. So the early part of this frustration, the disappointment, the boredom, and all the kind of thing, also we can explain with respect to the materiality. Now, equally we can explain with respect to the feelings. When you manage to go further and try to experience this subtle part, the pleasurable feeling can come in. These pain and the pleasure explain in experiencing the present moment is known as renunciated kind of pain and pleasure, and immaterial kind of pain and pleasure, and mind-based kind of pain and pleasure. They are not related with the organs, sensuous organs like the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body. So that is a good indicator the mindfulness is progressing. And type of concentration, that is called momentary concentration, also continuous. But equally you have a chance to misinterpret it or get discouraged due to this changing of your feelings. And therefore one person, he has, as an instructor, he has mentioned when the question happens, specifically for the lay people, he says when the mindfulness is increasing, some kind of a irritability increases, and some kind of a disappointments, fault-finding nature, and the pedantic, that means everything should be up to the last letter. So this kind of thing happen in the mind. This is also kind of a frustration, kind of a agitation, kind of a perturbed mind. So very rarely someone can understand whether it's a healthy or unhealthy. So this is the part where the theoretical knowledge, deductive knowledge, and the association with the true friends and interviews are really make a contribution. that you have to go prepared. These things are going to happen. And yet another dimension is, if you are meditating in order to gain some kind of a magical powers, or if you are meditating with the short objectives like to gain healing powers, and this and that of the magics, you are more vulnerable at this stage. And if you are not caring towards the morality, if your moral precepts are not intact, still you can entertain doubts. And if you do not have faith on the Buddha and his teaching and the Dhamma, Sangha and your precepts, this situation is quite volatile, and you may find very difficult to cross. Just like in a storm, you have to navigate the ship in a cautious way. So this is the first hurdle in your spiritual life, as to see, are you really meditating to see things as they are? Are you really ready to sacrifice towards this moral conduct? And are you really have a faith which is giving you the open-mindedness? And if it is so, easily you can understand and you can sort it out. But even then I would say, if you sort it out today, that not going to give a lasting answer. Again, tomorrow also it may come. Day after also it may come. But definitely to that, not to that extent. Slowly, slowly you will master the situation. So therefore the Buddha, he says, these things as imperfections. In the Theravada tradition, they have recognized 10 upakilesas. That's a kind of a hurdle. That's a kind of a test. Then says, when that kind of a success happen, that is, you are tracing very carefully toward the subtlest form of breath, and you are not worrying about the boredom, or either you note it, or you are not worrying about the uncertainty, and you are not going to entertain forced breathing, you are not allowing mind to fall into sleep, and you are not get up and go, and if endurance, and when that happens, sometimes the mind develop kind of a light perception. It is called as obhasa. When that happens, some people overestimate it. Or otherwise, the gladness, the rapture, the tranquility, and very resolution, very clear foresight, and some kind of certainty towards your own mindfulness, that you can predict, that you can maintain the mindfulness maybe 10-15 minutes or 30 minutes like, and kind of a very subtle balance towards equanimity, and the energy is really balanced, and these kind of thing happens. So it is good, of course, these are conducive factors, but one must not trust upon them as permanent, or as it mine, or as it me, or as it myself. So most of these things are related with the feelings. Therefore the Buddha says, this is the stage where you are overcoming doubts. That is to say, due to your correct methodology and endurance kind of thing, these things are coming, but your mind still have some kind of underlying tendencies. Therefore, your tendency is to over-exaggerate it, overestimate it, and some people going to claim this as jhanic experiences, and some people claim them as the path and fruition experiences, because internally there is no obstacle to think like that. But lucky enough, they have been mapped, they have been written, and they are in the literature. So therefore you must not let this overestimation to happen. So as a clue, I would like to relate here. The Buddha has mentioned 4 kinds of meditations in a generalized manner. He says, you can start from the concentration meditation and then you can shift into insight. That's the one axis. The other one is, right from the beginning you can do the insight meditation, and later when and where you develop certain amount of mindfulness and the concentration, you can go to the pure concentration type. Or otherwise you can do a combinated method, Yoganatha method. And the 4th one he has introduced. 4th one is called Dhammuddacca Viggahita Manasa. That means when you are meditating, an agitation can happen, a perturbance can happen due to meditation itself. Dhamma Uddhacca. Uddhacca means that agitation. This agitation happens due to your own meditation. So when that happens, if you know, then you can note it in such a way, even though the light perception happens, even though this gladness, even though this rapture, everything happens, you must not consider them as me or mine or myself. Instead, you must trust on the mindfulness that you have continued, or otherwise you have to trust upon the continuity, or if possible, anchor upon the primary object. But the thing is, by that time, primary object is very subtle. This is the only way you can verify that you are not deranged, you are not off the track. So therefore you have to be self-critical and not let the mind to overestimate. Then only one day you will understand, whenever you come to no pain, no pleasure kind of situation, you can be aware of. You can be vigilant, diligently. Now you know there is no so-called pleasure, there is no pain, but you are fully aware. You know you are not sleeping. You are not, you know you are not dead. You are not unconscious. There's a kind of a, I don't know, we have to call it a kind of a feeling. When that happens, that as I mentioned, it can be explained through the materiality, that means with respect to the in-breath and out-breath. There is an in-breath and out-breath, but almost unperceivable. And there's a kind of a feeling very difficult to categorize either as pleasurable or pain. But you are aware as a kind of feeling. When that happens, for the first time, as a novelty, you may be little hesitant and you may be little agitated. But when the meditation progress, it is being advised to maintain this situation as long as possible, because even for a short period, if you go there, hardly you can be awakened into that. Hardly you can be vigilant upon that. Hardly we can be diligent upon that. So therefore mastery or familiarization means you have to extend this period as long as possible. So Western books, when they are explaining this situation, they call this is kind of an inner peace or inner space. And some people put it as the whole body experience, because that experience you can't reduce to as seeing or hearing or smelling or touching or tasting. It's everything. And it happens only when and where mind becomes introspected and inwardly, not outwardly. So therefore it is called something inner space or whole body experience. When that happens, more and more you to familiarize it, more and more you to master it, that means you have to learn little longer sittings. So at the beginning we say that average 1 hour, but if you are going to take about 35 to 40 minutes to season the mind up to that level, Only very little time you have to, you can dwell upon it. You can be aware of it. So therefore, more and more you go practicing specifically in a retreat like that, you have to be skillful in two ways. One thing is you must try to reduce the time period from starting of the sitting to this as short as possible, but without skipping the necessary steps. In that sense, the walking meditation do a marvelous contribution. So if you are going to do walking meditation as a hobby, as a customary, or as a prerequisite for sitting, while during in the walking meditation you organize your mindset and mobilize your energy and prepare it so that when you go there and sit, immediately you can adjust it to be symmetrical and relaxed. And there won't be much of other distractions, and then easily you can be face to face with the breath. Even the breath is becoming either gross or subtle, you never try to interfere with this. You just let the natural breathing to happen and keep the vigilance. And more you familiarize, you will be, your interference or your commitment towards the breathing will be less and less. If I am to give an example, that when you are learning how to drive a car, at the beginning, under a teacher, you have to learn how to enter into the first gear without knocking the engine, and how to release the clutch so that it will get the pickup. And then when you go there, you have to learn a number of times how to enter into the gear and how to get out of it. And long training after, only he will teach you how to go into the first gear, and instead of coming back, you can go to the second gear, and there how to synchronize the gas as well as the speed, so that there won't be much of a jerk when the gear enters the second one. And after training only, you go for the third gear and top gear, and you have to prove yourself. You can manage that as and when necessary, then only you can get a license. But once you familiarize, when you are entering the first, second, third gears, it happens so swiftly, it happens so quickly, it won't take like you are in the learner's state. Because of your day-to-day application. Exactly the way, as a beginner, you must know step by step. Otherwise, the teacher will not be happy, you won't get the license. But once you got it, you get it because you want to go quickly. That is why you need a car. So exactly here, more and more you practice, the walking meditation gives the real mindset, and you sit, and immediately it can cut through and go into this inner space. And some people still make problems or entertain doubts, because at the beginning it takes minutes, sometimes 10, 15, 30 minutes. But when you retreat, soon you sit. You hardly touch the breath, immediately mind can go into this inner space. You go to this whole body experience. Under such circumstances, they can't understand what does it mean by the beginner's mind. So therefore they think, even the mind is ready to go to the inner space, they think they have to go through the hard or gross breathing, and then it must be middle, and it must be subtle. So therefore, without understanding the meaning of this, the beginner's mind, they try to do forced breathing. And then what happens is, the verily developed inner peace will be disturbed due to this interference. Because you don't recognize the momentum. In the retreat, second, third, fourth days, the successful yogi easily can go into this subtle state. So if it is happening, It is not much of a matter whether it is going through the breath or whether you going through the rising and falling. You won't believe sometimes it happens while in walking also. While you are observing the left leg and the right leg. So when you go and sit, don't try to force yourself to see the gross breath, to see the medium breath or the subtle breath, or to see the beginning, the middle and the breath, or to see the gap in between. All these things are tools. If the mind is going to the no pain, no pleasure kind of situation where the inner peace is there, the best way is you assume a comfortable sitting and just not knowing. That you know you are sit symmetrically, you are relaxed. And that very knowing, either through breath or without breath, directly you can go into the inner peace. Directly go to this whole body experience and sitting experience of the bodily posture or this inner space, both you can put under the same label of knowing. So therefore that simple the noting of knowing, if you wish to have noting, or with otherwise you can directly go without any kind of noting or labeling, go and facilitate this inner space or this whole body experience, and easily we can categorize it as, of course even it is relative, we can say this is what worth calling no pain, no pleasure. But this is not the maximum or ultimatum of the no pain, no pleasure. With compared to the past and the future pleasure, with compared to the mind-made pleasure and pain, this is a fair, balanced state where you can, where your body and mind start to heal itself. And it feel at home. It feel totality. So when and where you go there, many are asking, now I can go to that state, and what should I do the next? Should I contemplate upon the impermanence, suffering, and the lifeless, the soulless nature? Or should I go into the 32 parts, into the body and contemplate upon the repulsivity of it? Or should I contemplate upon the virtues of the Buddha? So many things, many doubts can happen. So that is because our mind is always asking either pain or pleasure. When and where it goes to the no pain, no pleasure, it feels unsettled. It feels kind of irritation. So therefore crafty mind come out with lot of suggestions. That is not to lead you to the liberation or to the emancipation, but to maintain the stream of consciousness. So therefore consciousness needs cases or dramatic nature, events, phenomena. So therefore you have to understand it is natural the minds to come out with it, but you must be well instructed, you must be well prepared to master that situation as much as possible, the no pain, no pleasure. There are three things you can do positively in order to maximize it, in order to facilitate it. That is, when and where, if you are going through the breath, when and where the breath becomes subtle, you have to experience where the threshold of last feeling of the in-breath and out-breath. If you are going through the track of in-breath and out-breath, the feeling of the in-breath and out-breath, where you go into the feeling state to the not feelable, unfeeling state. It's a thought moment. So when it start to become subtle, you must with the double fold mindfulness and the vigilance to see you are tracking and tracing to the last drop of the breath. And then you know, now no more feeling, no more breath. to be feel, and that is the starting point. And then you go to this inner space, no boundaries. You feel the huge space. And when that happens, you must really appreciate it, understand this. Now I am in the state where I can't categorize as the pain or pleasure. This is kind of a no pain, no pleasure, as if there is no breath. Definitely, theoretically, you know you are not dead. Breathing happens, but you can't feel it. And then onward, you must see how much you can maintain this equilibrium without interference, without forking your fingers, without letting the crafty mind to play fool, how much you can do without doing anything. You are completely withdrawing your ego. You are completely withdrawing the conceit, the comparison. You are completely foregoing your desire. So you try to be desireless, choiceless, unassuming. Choiceless means that you don't know whether you are progressing or not. Never mind. You don't know whether you are sleeping or not. Never mind. You have to be aware this choice, the choosing nature is a sign of defilements. And you must not assume this as one of my results. I am the person reach this. You have no such an assumption. You understand whenever the cause and effect relationship happen, once the causes are fulfilled, this is happening. This is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. So that is the way you maximize as long as possible, and if you are sharp enough, you can see at the end of this, your quota of the concentration, again the rational minds come and sets in. And therefore everywhere the body you start to feel. Or sometimes noises are entering into. And wandering thoughts are gushing into. And that is also one thought moment. This is the way out. So you are marking the stepping in and the duration you can maintain without your interference, and how do you get out. And there you are appreciating it. You are going prepared. You are going fully informed. So your attitude is withdraw as much as possible. If necessary, you can disclaim it. This is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. But you are really experiencing it, but you can't say you are happy or not. You don't know whether you are progressing or not. You don't know whether it is something doing or something happening. So these are the very good signs of the ultimate Nibbana, the ultimate emancipation. So you must have the foresight of your ultimatum, then only you can rehearse it. So this is in terms of the feelings. So when that happens, more and more you practice regularly, I would be specified, more and more you practice walking and then sitting, kind of a rotation, this time duration you can expand little by little. Some teachers instruct you to make a determination to expand this area, this inner space-time. For example, if you gauge it and say, I can naturally be there for 5 minutes, next time give the most conducive conditions and make a determination as and when the breath disappears, that means at the peak of your concentration, may my mind stay there for 10 minutes. If it is going to work, if your biological clock is going to work, definitely your determination power will be increasing, the mental power will be increasing. So slowly you are increasing this time, and more you increase, you are bound to see the entering is very, very pleasurable. So much of the momentum. But towards the end, again the little bit of thoughts, again little bit of sounds, and pain is going to happen. So that means there's a qualitative difference that you can see only when you are going to expand this area, this time, more and more. So that means Even though you can go to a so-called no pain, no pleasure situation, there are some elements of perception. There are some elements of volitional activities or fabrications. There are some perverted actions of the consciousness. So more and more you go expand it this time, you will see what is the most prominent or what is the most frequent distraction pulling you out of this no pain, no pleasure. It's a really an attribution or really a character trait. But many people become impatient to diagnose it. Some may get out due to the pains. Some may get out due to other perceptional things. Some get out of this volitional. There are three: affectionate, connotative and cognitive. The Buddha is not here to pick it and recognize. You are the only person. That is also you recognize whether you are affective type or the feelingful, or biased to the feeling and aesthetic and all the kind of, or the connotative. That means the perception is, the volition or cognitive. So let it happen again and again and again. When that happens, only you will understand, once the materiality come to almost a cessation, and you appreciate no pain, no pleasure, and you can dwell upon there fairly a long time. At the beginning it is very, very creamy and very attractive and magnetic, but towards the end, slowly, one or the other going to manifest. And then you are all of a sudden come back to the rational mind. And if you are really vigilant, really diligent, or really observe the phenomena in the impartial, unassuming way as someone else, then you can diagnose what kind of a character trait. And don't ask then what to do. The very diagnosis itself is the answer. You know this is the type. That will never manifested as far as you are living in the sensuous plane and pleasure. That will never manifested as far as you are dwelling upon the mental pain and pleasure. You have to go to the no pain, no pleasure and make the situation as open as possible, and we observe in the diagnostic manner, not the fine-faulting manner, not the irritating manner, not the self-critical manner, or not the pedantic way. So that is the way you are bound. You are to see the dirt under the carpet. So that itself is a great discovery or diagnosis, and even though we are sitting in the same hall with the same instruction, the same timetable, our diagnosis, individual diagnosis may be different. So therefore the signs and the symbols and the kind of distractions going to happen different. While we are sitting, one person may complain, my distraction was bodily feelings. I can't sit long and all the kind of thing. Some other may come out and say the perceptional, the how they perceive, cognize and recognize different things. And other people are very crafty, making a lot of fabrications and mental formations, and that become an obsession. So your report or your interviews, if you are sharp enough to record it, even there is no person to listen to it, you yourself will be your master. So that is why in when the Sigmund Freud is prescribing this free association, he told the healer, the person who is doing the free association, the patient will come and sit. He or she has to confirm professionally, I will not divulge what you are going to say. Feel free. I am professionally promising you. So a few days time, the familiarity on the frequent understanding will increase. The patient will start to talk. Even in her or his unconscious areas will going to come. And there are maybe in 1918 or something like that, Sigmund Freud has told, you have to listen to the patient as a deaf person. You must not interrupt her outcome. Then that means you also must listen with your maximum concentration. Don't try to analyze what he's going to say. Don't try to choose. It is good or bad. You have to get a distance and make sure that you are vigilant, you are diligent. The other person is ultimately coming out with what is the case. The moment you hit the rock, the moment you come to the correct point, and that very catharsis itself is the starting point of the heal. But when you are in the mindfulness, you are the patient, you are the doctor, your psychiatrist, whole theory is the mindfulness. Your mind is in a catharsis. It is coming out. And you are the very person observant. And only thing is, you must not arrive at a decision. That is why they call, you have an evenly suspended attention or suspended decision. Under such circumstances, our tendencies, our traits just come out. And therefore sometimes quite irrelevant kind of thinking patterns, kind of irrelevant kind of bodily sensations, and some connection with the universal consciousness, Akash library, and many things happen. If you are going to interpret them, if you are going to make use them, you are bound to lose. Best thing is to use them as just diagnostic part and don't rush to a decision. Just let it happen. If it is true to type, if you are fully endowed with, it will come and do the task. You must not an opportunist. You must not understand, think that this is the only chance I am going to have and so that I have to get the maximum benefit. Means that is the simple definition for the opportunist. Your main task must be to fulfill the duties or fulfill the causes. When the causes are fulfilled, the effects, it is not the function of the Buddha, or it is not the function of the Almighty God, Almighty, Omnipotent God. That's the universal law. So therefore, you never hesitating to fulfill the duties, but never result-oriented. So therefore, more than in this material or corporeality, the feelings are carrying you further down there, and kind of a training you never find in the other worldly affairs. Worldly affairs is always smeared with the fame, gain and popularity and all the kind of thing. Here completely other side. You are not doing this but to understand things as they are. So therefore the feelings, or with the subject of feeling, it is leading you further into your mind, more and more to the center. But even then, the functions of the perception and the manifestations of the manipulations of the volition and the mind is still playing. But sometimes it appears when you are studying the Satipatthana, this much is enough. Even though the perception, volition and consciousness things are not yet tackled, this much may be enough for you to reach the first Maggapala Jnana, that means first past knowledge. But then onward you will never stop the business. You will understand the taste of it, the inward trip. That is called insight meditation. And therefore then onward, even without the second person, even without helping, you will be qualified to do self-retreat, qualified to be isolated in one place and go to inner journey. But up to this level, it is conventionally one can say you must have at least a thorough understanding of theory or association with the advanced yogis or at least working people on this line and often meeting together and sharing each one's ideas, then the refinement can happen. But even in the Theravada tradition, when you are reading the books, hardly you find the lucid, important, practical hints. They are there, but amidst of huge, colossal amount of literature. So when you practice only, you can understand what are the most pragmatic and practical hints. So therefore, for the last 20, 30 years, like anyway, we are lucky, fair number of teachers, they have practiced and they start to write, they start to talk and they start to share with. And that is also, if you wish to take this opportunity, you must be up to that level. Your mindfulness must be uplift you to connect into that kind of vibrations. Then the good vibrations get together and the momentum starts. So I would like to remark that today's talks also may help you to develop this level and whenever necessary to absorb the good vibes as well as emit good vibes and to go deep into your spiritual journey and get the maximum of this dispensation. Thank you very much for listening.